All right, hello everybody, it's MACurfman here. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, 2018 Best Year Ever. That's what we're talking about today, how you can be more productive, more successful, achieving your best year ever. So I don't know about you, but that's what I'm looking for 2018. So let's go ahead and let's start talking about best year ever. What does that really mean? Best year ever. And if I can get my slides to work, there we go. Before we do that, let's just tell you a little bit about myself if you don't know me. I spent the first couple of years of my career in city planning up in the state of Maine, did some economic development work up there for a couple of years as I was going to grad school. Went back to Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from, went to the eastern side of the state instead of the western side of the state, and became a city manager on that side of the state. Did that for about 10 years. Did that for about 10 years. Then I started my own consulting firm. Grew it from just me to eventually about 20 people, 20 consultants working for me at one point. Then 9/11 happened. Most of my work was with small local governments in Pennsylvania and up through New England. And of course, 9/11 pretty much turned local governments around to different priorities. So I closed my shop in the Philly area in 2003, moved to South Carolina, where I currently live, and then went to work for a large national consulting firm at that point. Traveled the country with them for about 4 years. I loved traveling around the country, working with them, about 400 projects in total. Loved what I did. And I found that one of the things that I loved the most was the training side of it rather than the consulting side of it. So when I left them after 4 years, I started my own firm again, and this time concentrated more on the training services rather than consulting, although I do a fair amount of consulting services now as well. So founder, CEO, and CLE. When you own your own company, you get to decide what title you want to call yourself, right? So CLE is Chief Learning Evangelist. That's really what I am. I'm an evangelist for learning. I love learning myself, and I love that part of the business, learning and teaching other people. So that's a little bit about me. We're going to talk today about your best year ever. 2018 being your best year in 2018. What does that best year ever look like in your eyes? When we get to December 31st, 2018, what is it that you have accomplished that has made it the best year ever? And so what does that mean? What does it look like? What does it even feel like at that point, right? What do you feel like when you've reached what you want to accomplish during the year? So it's really a designed process. Best year ever is really a designed process. It doesn't happen, as you recognize, it doesn't happen by accident. Success in any level and any measure and any type of thing that you want to think about in terms of levels of success doesn't just happen. There's some sort of design in the process. And if we think about the levels of success that we want to have in 2018, we want to be able to design that in. So when I talk about, December 31st, 2018, here's what I've accomplished, here's what it feels like. If we can describe that, what we've achieved in 2018, if we can describe that with our senses, our five senses, what do we see? What do we feel, touch, hear, taste, smell, right? No, so some of those are a little weird about, accomplishments, taste, for example, right? Unless you are intending to be the best cake maker, right? Or chef, tasting may be a little weird. But if we can get to the point where we're using all of our senses to describe what success is in our eyes, then we can really achieve it. Then point there's some sort of, okay, this is what it is. Success, sometimes, you ask different people, you get different answers. Even in my own mind, I have different answers about what success is. So if I can really think about those levels of success and think about how I describe those levels of success with my senses, now I have that in my mind. So it's really a designed process, thinking about what that means. Instead of just blindly going through the year, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm going here, I'm going there, I want to design it intentionally. And that's a kind of a key word for the day as well, intentionality. I want to be more intentional this year than I've ever been in my life. I want to be more intentional about what I'm doing, whether it's work-related items or whether it's family-related items. I want to be, sometimes those things, particularly the things that are less work-related, are less intentional. So I need to think about my intentions. What do I intend to do? What do I intend to accomplish? What does success look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, sound like at the end of the year? So Stephen Covey, Begin with the End in Mind, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Again, if you've not read that book, hopefully you all have. One of the best books I've ever read. This is habit number 2 in his book. Habit number 2 says, begin with the end in mind. That's what we're talking about. I want to begin the year with that end, with December 31st in mind. What does those levels of success look like on December 31st? I'm going to start the year January 1st, now January 9th, January 9th. What does that look like at the end? I'll even go so far as to call it a vision. I want to create and craft and hone a vision for what that looks like at the end of the year. I think vision's important. I think crafting and creating and honing a vision is going to be terribly important to becoming successful by December 31st in everything that you do. Alan Mulally, I don't know if you know him, he was the former president and CEO of Ford Motor Company. He was picked for Ford in 2000. Universal pick at the time. He had never led a car company before. In fact, Ford, when they chose him, they had never had a CEO who had never been in the car industry before. Most of the CEOs in Ford had been Fords, as a matter of fact. So having this guy, Mulally, come over from Boeing to run the car company, he came in and right away changed a lot of things. One of the things that he changed was, he said, okay, we need a new vision for Ford. And a lot of people looked at him like he was crazy. What are you talking about, a vision for Ford? We make cars. We don't have visions. So he spent a lot of time in the beginning of his tenure there, a lot of time talking about vision and going through a corporate-wide visioning process. Every single person in Ford, from the top people in the top corporate offices all the way down through the line workers, were involved in this visioning process. So who are we? What are we about? What are you trying to accomplish? And everybody was involved in that, crafting that, forming that. And he said, one of his quotes that I love is, what I have learned from this process is that the power of a compelling vision. So I want you to think about what your compelling vision is. What is your compelling vision for 2018? That's what we're here talking about today. We'll just start thinking about crafting a compelling vision for what December 31st, 2018 looks like. Now, I want you to think in terms of big things. Now, we'll get to the small things here in a little while, but right now I want to concentrate on the big things. I want you to think about dreaming big. At the end of 2018, here's what I want to have accomplished. Now, there's a movement out there for small what I'll call small dreams, right? Dream small. John Johnson, he's a publishing mogul. I have a lot of respect for him, but this quote I really do not like. Dream small dreams. If you make them too big, you get overwhelmed and you don't do anything. If you make small goals and accomplish them, it gives you the confidence to go on to higher goals. Now, I understand the sentiment that's expressed here. I understand where he's coming from and do agree to a certain extent with that. But in terms of goals, in terms of dreams, I don't agree with it. I don't agree to the small, dream small, to think small, because dreaming small and thinking small just leads to small thinking and smallness. I don't want to dream about small things, okay? And I get what he's talking about. If you accomplish some small things, you can go on to the bigger things. I get that. But what I don't really want to is set the goal too low, set the bar too low. Okay, so I accomplished something. I accomplished that small thing. Here's what it says in my mind. Here's what it says in my mind. If I accomplish that small thing, okay, so what? I accomplished that thing. It was small. Of course I could accomplish it. I can accomplish it in my sleep. It doesn't excite me. It doesn't make me want to go to those big dreams, those big things. In my mind, it's small thinking leads to smallness of everything. Daniel Hudson Burnham was an architect, the late 1800s, early 1900s. Probably one of my favorite people to study in history. I'm a big history buff. I love history. This guy he designed most of what we think about in Chicago today. A lot of big buildings in Chicago. In fact, in New York as well. He designed what's called the Flatiron Building in New York City. Now, Flatiron Building is that triangle-shaped building right in the center of Times Square. You'll notice it. You'll see it right away. He was a big architect. He designed, in fact, the Chicago Expo in, I think, 1899. He was responsible for much of the Expo, what eventually became the World's Fair. Here's his quote. "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work." Did you get that? The little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably themselves won't be realized. Again, there's no magic there. Okay, so we set the bar low. Fine, we achieve that. I'm not excited about it because it's too low. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work. One of my favorite business authors, Tom Peters, puts it another way. BHAG. I don't know if you know what BHAG means. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Right? That's what Tom Peters, if you know Tom Peters at all, you'll get what he's talking about right away. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Big things that are out there, way out there maybe just so far out there that it's just sometimes a little bit ridiculous. BHAG. Big, hairy, audacious goals. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I would really like to achieve. Now, I'm not saying a goal so big that you can't accomplish it. Some big dream that is just totally unrealistic to achieve, perhaps by December 31st. Okay, so I'm not going so far off the deep end here. John Johnson said, okay, small dreams. I want a big dream big, but make them realistic as well. But I do want them to be big, hairy, audacious goals. So I want you to think about this vision, crafting this vision. And again, there may be multiple visions for 2018, for what you want to accomplish in 2018. I do. I have multiple visions for what I want to create and craft for 2018. My levels of success that I want to create. Some are business related. Some are family related. some are financially related, some are spiritually related. There's a lot of different facets of our lives, and you want to be able to craft this vision that I'm talking about in terms of all of those facets of your life, areas of your life. So I'm talking about creating this compelling vision that Alan Mulally talked about. A compelling vision. Now, it's going to be important. There's several aspects to this crafting this compelling vision. One is it needs to be written out. You need to write it down. Again, you're going to have multiple compelling visions for 2018, so you need to write those things down. Write it out. Spend time writing it out. And what I want you to do, one of the reasons to be able to write it down is you want to be able to look at those compelling visions every day. You want it right in front of you. I typically post my writing in front of my desk so that I can see it every day. These are the things that I'm working toward in 2018. This is where I want to be at the end of the year. You know, without those things in front of me, guess what happens? SOS. Shiny object syndrome. Do you have that? I do. Shiny object syndrome. Oh yeah, hey, let's go here. Or let's go do this. Or let's look at this business opportunity over here. And it's not where I want to be. It's not really according to my vision that I've crafted. It gets me off track. So that's why I want those things in front of me every day. I look at them, write them down, look at them every day. Again, make them big, but focus on success. Make those dreams, those visions big, but again, you want to be able to. This is what it looks like at the end of 2018. This is what my levels of success have been. Again, focus on the end of 2018. That's what we're talking about today. Or again, sometimes those visions are multi-year things. So focus on that end point that Stephen Covey talked about. So the end point. Use present tense language, however. The language you use in writing that down, present tense. Not, I'm going to write a book. I am a published author. You want to describe yourself as standing in the midst of December 31st, 2018. That's the language you want to use. I am a published. If one of your visions is to write a book and publish it by the end of 2018. Excuse me. Again, it's not I'm going to write a book. I want to write a book. I am a published author, standing in the midst of December 31st, 2018. Clear language. Clear and concise language. So you don't want to beat around the bush at it. You want to be as few words as possible, concise, and again, clear. Most of this is going to be for yourself, but you still want to be clear with yourself. Clear, concise language so that you can look at it and remember it. It's got to be, though, infused with passion and emotion. Use passion in the statements, emotion in the statements, because again, you're going to be looking at these things in dark days. There's going to be tough times between here and December 31st. One of my visions is to create a book, a series of books. So last year I've been working on project management, a couple of project management books. It's actually turned out to be a series of books, and I do intend to have them published by the end of 2018. In fact, hopefully by June of 2018. So you want to be able to infuse that with passion, because again, you're going to have some dark days between now and the end of the year. So you want to make sure that passion, the emotion in that statement, carries you forward through those tough times. The last one is, again, very important to motivation. Paint a graphic mental picture. You want that mental picture out in front of you so that motivates you. Every day you look at it, I see it in my head. You know, for me, that what's carried me through the last year and a half or so I've been writing these books is I see myself At a bookstore. Okay, so it's a little embarrassing perhaps. I see myself at a bookstore. I see myself sitting in front of a table signing books. Now, that's probably not going to happen. Not a lot of people are going to be standing in line for a series of project management books. But that's how I see myself. It's a mental picture I have of myself there. That's carrying me through. So compelling vision for who you are, for what you want to accomplish in 2018. Write it down. Be able to concentrate on it. Look at it every day. Again, very important to use the present tense language in that. So creating this vision is one thing, and you want to be able to, have it so that you can see it, look at it, smell it, taste it, feel it, that vision. But that in and of itself is not going to get you to that end point, right? Just having that compelling vision out in front of you is not going to do it. We got to go further than that. But the vision is, in fact, the first step in that process. From vision, now this part is a linking process. We're going to link things to that vision. That's why it's very important to establish that vision first. So we've got a vision out in front of us. The next thing we're going to link to is the goals. Again, multiple goals to reach those visions, those multiple visions, multiple goals. Now, it's very important, again, to have those written down. So vision is one thing, and it's, meant to be pretty out there, on the edge. So now I've got to draw it back a little bit, make it more actionable. Goals are then meant to make the vision more actionable. I can act upon the goals. So again, writing those down is going to be important as well. Again, goal setting increases, number one, motivation. It motivates me. If I can write that goal down, I can look at that goal. Here's the vision I'm going to. It motivates me. Second of all, lots and lots of research behind this. Just read a study, a Harvard study not long ago on achievement, and it was talking about educational achievement at that point. Setting goals, huge correlation between setting the goals and achievement, educational achievement. It was the last study I read, but lots and lots of other achievements as well. So motivation and achievement, setting goals. So you want to be able to write down the goals. Now, there are lots of ways, of course, to write down goals. I'm sure you've probably heard the SMART goal process, S-M-A-R-T. It's an acronym. But I'm going to talk today about a little bit different, a little twist on that. I'm going to call it SMARTer goals, SMARTer. Similar to SMART, but going a little bit further into the process as well. So here's what SMARTer is. Specific, just like SMART was. Specific, you got to have something specific. Just don't say I want to even write a book, right? Writing a book is really not specific enough. I want to write a project management book that's geared toward non-project managers. That's pretty specific. Measurable. That's the M, measurable. I want to be able to measure that. Well, how can I measure something like a book geared toward non-project managers? Well, I can measure it in terms of progress, number one. Number two, I can measure it in terms of feedback that I'm getting, perhaps in the writing process. I can measure it in terms of resources that I'm using. Lots of ways that I can measure against that goal. And in fact, the more I found, the more points of measurement that I can get, the more successful I am in that goal. So multiple measurement points is going to be really important. Achievable is the A. Can I really achieve this? Is this realistic? Is this some, pie in the sky type thing? If it's really a pie in the sky type thing that I really can't achieve, then all I'm doing is wasting my time, my energy, my resources by going after that. So the A in SMARTer, again, is going to help me. Is this achievable? I really have to analyze that. The R is relevant. Is it relevant to what I'm trying to accomplish? Again, this is the tie back to the vision. This is the tie back to the vision. Okay, is it relevant? Which vision is this helping me accomplish? Maybe multiple. So that's the R. The T is the time bound. some sort of time frame in there. I'm going to accomplish it by 2018, so December 31, 2018. Or maybe first is my deadline to release these series of project management books. So some time-bound time frame, because if there's no time frame in there, it's not going to happen. You know, there's nothing holding me accountable. There's nothing to schedule against. So the time-bound. The E in SMARTer is evaluated. Now, a lot of times, what I've done in the past is set goals, SMART goals even, and, you know, just kind of set them beginning of the year and really not paid much attention to them. But here's what happens throughout the year. Things change, right? I make plans. I try to accomplish things, but all of a sudden I hit some sort of barrier, or something that I had planned on is not able to be accomplished now. So now that SMART goal, really, again, I can't achieve it, or maybe it's not relevant. So things change throughout the year. So I have to go back and evaluate the goal. Is this still, is it specific enough? Is it measurable? How can I look at the measurement points? Is it achievable? Okay, something is in the way, some barriers in the way. What can I do to remove that barrier? Or is it a stopping point at this point? Or again, relevant. Maybe my vision has changed in the midst of the year. So I'm constantly evaluating this SMARTer goal against what my vision is, or what my vision maybe perhaps has changed as well. So evaluate it. And going right along with that is the adjustment. So I'm going to evaluate and then readjust my goals. I'm going to readjust my goals to fit where I am now. So January 9th is one point, but January 10th could be another point, and something could have changed between now and tomorrow. I have to adjust my goals, maybe my vision, certainly my tasks. We'll get to those in just a few minutes. So SMARTer, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, evaluated, and readjusted. So SMARTer goals. Again, now I'm writing multiple SMARTer goals to be able to achieve vision that we talked about, the multiple vision. So I'm writing a lot of SMARTer goals. So if you've not written SMART goals before, SMARTer goals, again, I would encourage you to begin that process. It takes a little bit of time at first, but I've been using SMARTer goals, well, SMART goals at least, for at least 10 years or more. And it takes me just a couple of seconds now to be able to figure out what I need to do. So again, being able to think in terms of this vision and setting SMARTer goals to accomplish that vision on the process. Without that step, without figuring out where, it's like getting in your car. You know, my father, when I was growing up, we lived in western Pennsylvania, and rural western Pennsylvania, and we'd go for drives sometimes on Sunday afternoons. And we'd get in the car, all six of us would get in the car, and we'd go someplace. And a lot of times, us kids would think, okay, well, we're just kind of meandering around. There's no real intent here. My father always had an intent. My father always had a destination in mind. It was either my grandmother's place, or sometimes it was a favorite restaurant we used to go to on Sunday evenings. But he always had a destination in mind. That's similar to this process, this vision and goal setting process. We have to have that in mind. We have to have that endpoint in mind. Without that, it's like we're meandering all around. And we'll never achieve the things that we want to achieve in our lives, whether it's work-related or non-work-related or family issues, whatever it is. We'll never achieve those things if we don't set those things out in front of us. The vision, SMARTer goals. Number one place to start in terms of becoming that best year ever in 2018. The next step in the process, so that's really important, but it can't be the only thing that we do. Next step in the process. Now we're going to go through some planning process. to be visions, goals, to be able to, just merely by having those vision and goals is not gonna automatically happen. Planning hacks, so some shortcuts, some things to be able to do in terms of planning. So the first one is what I call WBS hack. Now WBS from project management. WBS, if you don't know what it is, work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is WBS. So I use WBS a lot in a lot of different things, not just in projects and project management, but work breakdown structure, well, here, it answers this question. How do you eat an elephant? Of course, the answer is what? One bite at a time, right? No, okay, so I'm not encouraging you to eat elephants. That's not the point. But how do you accomplish something large? How do you accomplish something large like publish a whole set of project management books? Well, you can't do it all at once, of course. It's got to be in little bite-sized pieces. Any little pieces. So the work breakdown structure process is breaking that big, huge, elephant-sized issue, goal, vision, into multiple bite-sized pieces so that you can accomplish it. And two things. So that you can accomplish it quickly. That's number one. And easily. That's number two. The whole work breakdown structure process enables you to accomplish the work easily. Because if the work is not quick, you will get bogged down in the process. I have, many times. You get bogged down. The work becomes too difficult. The work becomes too labor-intensive. The work becomes too long, too arduous. And I found that when I get there, if the work becomes too hard or too long, if I start breaking those big pieces up, maybe into smaller pieces, it gets easier and it gets shorter. So the work breakdown structure is a process to break the work down so that you can accomplish it quickly and easily. Now, PMBOK, again, I said I was borrowing this from project management. PMBOK is Project Management Body of Knowledge. If you've not read that book, don't. No, it's good reference material, but it's 600 and some pages long of just, in my view, just a poorly written document. It's got good information. Don't get me wrong. So PMBOK, anyhow, is instructive here in this work breakdown structure process. Here's what they talk about in terms of the WBS. It is now we'll talk a little bit about this. It's a deliverable-oriented grouping of components that organizes and defines the total scope of the project or the work. So it's a deliverable. So deliverable, by the way, is basically just the result of work. It's not the work itself. It's the result of the work. It's the outcome of the work. Right? So it's outcome-oriented grouping of components that organizes and defines. So it's components, so multiple pieces of work, those small pieces that we were talking about, that organizes and defines. So we can now organize this work that we're doing through these pieces of deliverables. So the deliverables organize the work for us. Organizes and defines the total scope of the work or the project. So it's done in levels. It's a hierarchical process. I'll go through this relatively quickly. Level 1 is that thing that we're trying to accomplish with the project. Level 2 are those deliverables, the major pieces of the deliverables. Let me just give you an example. Let's say I wanted to build a house. If I wanted to build a house, some of the major deliverables in this house, one is going to be the foundation of the house. The second is going to be the walls, the roof, now the rooms, maybe the kitchen, the living room, etc. So those are major pieces, major deliverables inside that house. Next level down are major components. So there are component pieces of those outcomes, component pieces of the deliverables. One would be, let's say, the foundation, for example. If that was the major deliverable, a piece of that deliverable is going to be, let's say, we're going to excavate for the foundation. We're going to dig the hole. Right? Next component piece might be the pouring of the concrete. So those are that deliverable. Next level down, subcomponents. So, for example, the excavation of the hole, the excavation of the foundation. It can be broken in multiple steps. So I need to hire an excavator. Well, first I need to survey the property, hire an excavator, dig, etc. So there's subcomponents of that. Next level lower. Let's say I'm going to choose, I'm going to hire an excavator. Okay, well, how do I hire an excavator? There are to do. I can't just walk up to somebody on the street and say, okay, I need you to dig my foundation for me. Well, there are lots of things that I need to do in order to figure out how to hire somebody to dig the foundation. That's the next level. Next level down, okay, we could continue down in the process, but this is important. We're going to proceed only until the detailed activities are so well understood that there's no reason to continue the process. See, that's the point. See that word there? Detailed activities. What we're doing in this work breakdown structure process is we're developing more and more and more details as we go down through it. Up at the top level, the project level, build a house. Okay, if I were to walk up even to a contractor, for example, right? I need you to build me a details on that. There's, okay, what kind of house? How many levels? How many bathrooms? How many bedrooms, etc. Right? So the work breakdown structure process helps to develop those details, and the more levels down we go, the more detailed we get. And it's important to get into the details to as fine as we can until that level of detail is so well understood there's no reason to continue the process. Right? So this work breakdown structure might look something like this. As I said, a hierarchical process. Task 1, 2, 3, etc. So task 1, again, might be foundation of the house. Task 1.1 might be, okay, well, I've got to hire an excavator, or I've got to excavate. 1.1 might be excavate. 1.1.1, the next level lower, hire excavator. 1.1.2 is going to be they're going to survey the property, etc. So what I'm doing is going further into the process, deeper into that process, developing more and more details. So tracking back. So how does this help me then be more successful for 2018? So if I can think about my vision, remember I said this is a linking process. So here's my vision out in front of me. I've now drawn back to some goals. So I have some smarter goals that I've developed in order to get me to those visions. Now what I'm doing is that next step lower in the process. All right, here's some goals that I have. Well, how am I going to accomplish those goals? Well, writing a series of project management books, well, there's no detail there at all. I got to develop some details. So if it's a series of books, well, what are the books involved in the series? So I got to scope that out. And okay, well, if I say one book is geared toward non-project managers, what does that mean? I'm going to develop some details in there. So the more details I get, the better I am going to be able to say, okay, well, today I'm going to work on task 1.1.1, and you name that task, whatever that task is. I'm going to work on scoping out this book. What does it mean, for non-project managers? What does that mean? So I might do an outline, might be a subtask. Research is another subtask, etc. So the more I develop those tentacles, if you will, down into the work breakdown structure process, more details that I develop there, the more I am going to be able to actually do the work of getting to that vision. See, that's important. The vision's good, the goals are good, but now we're talking about the work. to be able to get to those goals and to that vision. So it's really important to dig down into, again, way down into those details. How am I going to be able to, okay, I'm going to write these series of books, but what does that mean, and how can I do it? Okay, book number 1 might be to be an intermediate course, etc. So the more details that I develop. So within those details, then, the details is, okay, here's the next hack. I call it the 1/8 and 5W hack. Right? Remember, we learned these in school: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Right? So we use these here. Sometimes this is called the WBS dictionary, Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary, in project management terms. But I call it the 1/8 and 5W hack. So how? I'm going to grab one of those tasks. If you think about going, I'm going to go back up here. Let's say I'm going to work on task 2.1.1.1. Right? I'm going to work on that task. So what do I need? What's the specific task? So how it relates to the specific task. So let's say I'm doing an outline for the book geared toward non-project managers. So that I'm going to do outline. That's a specific task. The next step is who. Well, who's involved in doing that? It might be me. It might be people working with me. So I'm going to scope out who's involved in that specific task. Next is the what. So what do I need? What materials, equipment, supplies do I need? I need a computer to write. I need to, supply whatever material supplies that I need. Cost items. Last year I spent a week up in the mountains of North Carolina writing. I wrote for a whole week. And, there was some cost there. So, again, I can write those costs down. Again, what I hear, I'm developing more details to that process. So that's the what. The when, again, time frame. We talked about the time frame. That's in terms of duration. How long is this going to take from beginning to end? So to outline the book, maybe it takes me a couple of days to put a good outline together. Time in terms of hours. Well, how many hours is it going to take me? If I say 2 days, it might not take me 16 hours. It might take me, a couple hours here, a couple hours there, 4, 5, 6 hours to do a good outline, perhaps. And then milestones. Some mileposts or milestones. Okay, I'm going to do this here. There's deadlines, milestones. So when? Again, this is also relating to that one specific task. Where? Might be some type of location. Where am I going to do it? I'm going to go back up to that cabin I found in North Carolina here in February. And again, why? That's linking back to that goal and to the vision. So the 1H5W hack is, again, developing the details inside of that task. So if it's task 2.1.1.1, I'm developing these details for that one specific subtask, and then consequently for all of those other ones as well. So that's a lot. It's time consuming. It's a lot to do. But again, the more details I develop in here, the more details I develop here, the more successful I'm going to become in actually doing those tasks, which will lead me to the goals, which will lead me to the vision that I've crafted. So the next step is, again, in this plan, put together what I'm going to call a master task list from all those things. So we may have, let's say maybe 6 or 8 visions for what we want to accomplish for 2018. Again, maybe it's related to work activities. Maybe it's related to home activities, family activities. Maybe it's related to spiritual side. So I'm thinking in terms of crafting. I think probably 6 or 8 visions of what you want to have accomplished by the end of 2018. So eventually working my way down to what I'm calling a master task list. So what I'm doing is bringing that structure over from the WBS what we just talked about, the structure, the hierarchical structure. Now I'm going to create the tasks, my individual tasks. So that lowest level in the work breakdown structure, that lowest level we're talking about. So if you go back to the work breakdown structure here, so the lowest level in task number 1 is going to be 1.1.1, this task over here, plus 1.1.2. So it's the combination in the work breakdown structure, it's the combination of 1.1.1 and 1.1.2 that help accomplish task 1.1. It's the combination of task 1.1 and 1.2 that accomplish task 1. It's the combination of task 1, 2, and 3 that accomplish the whole thing. So it's a hierarchical process working its way down and ultimately working its way back up through the system. So what we're looking for is the lowest level subtask in each tentacle, if you will, in each leg. So 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and then down here, 1.1, the 2 plus the 3. So these down here are the lowest levels in that subtask. Anyhow, I think you get that point. So what I'm doing is, again, master task list, bringing the structure over, lowest level subtask in each work breakdown structure. Now I'm looking at some sort of priority system. Okay, so I've got all these tasks spread across all these goals, spread across all of these visions to accomplish. Now I have a lot in my master task list, and I was going to count and I forgot to count. But there's probably well over 1,500, at this point, 1,500 tasks in this master task list that I've constructed for 2018. Now, don't get overwhelmed by that. What we're doing is, again, it's intentional that we have a lot of details. You think about everything you do all year long, right? There's a lot of details in that. So don't get overwhelmed with that at this point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at those tasks by, again, goal, by objective, and begin to prioritize those tasks. As well there. When does this need to be accomplished? So if I'm intending to publish this set of project management books by June of 2018, I'm finishing up the writing process here in January, early February. I'm handing it off to my editor. Through the publishing process, we're going to do some self-publishing along with a couple other things. So again, June is still a good deadline at this point. So we need to add in those time elements, also the resource elements. What resources do I need? Do I need other people involved? Editor. How much money do I need for these things? So again, to be able to accomplish all those things that you want to, there's going to be resources that are going to need to be, and then also the relationships to other tasks as well. Task 1 might need to be accomplished first, and then go on to task 2. I can't start task 2 until task 1 is accomplished. So you want to look for those interdependent relationships as well, because sometimes those will hang me up. I forgot to do task 1. Well, I can't do task 2 before that one's completed. So this master task list, and I'll show you my version of it. Constructing, again, it's prioritized. The tasks are prioritized. We've got time elements, resources, and again, there's association with other tasks as well. So we think about, again, the prioritization of work that we do. We can't do everything all at once. So you'll need to be able to start focusing after creating this task list. Start focusing. So the hack I have is called the Pareto hack. So again, sometimes the Pareto principle, if you're familiar with the Pareto principle, is an Italian economist in the 1800s. His principle is 20% of the work gets accomplished. 80% of the work gets accomplished by 20% of the people, or 80% of your 80% of your sales end up being driven by 20% of your people, etc. So in terms of the tasks, we can look at 80% of, again, many trivial tasks. 80% of time expended results in 20% of the results. Or the vital few tasks. 20% of time yields 80% of the results. Now, where would you rather focus your efforts? I can tell you where I've focused a lot of my efforts in the past. It's been on those trivial things, and it's only yielded me minimal results. So the last couple of years, I've really, in terms of this process, been trying to figure out, okay, well, I don't want to spend time, I mean, I've got a lot of tasks, 1,500 tasks, but there's some there that are more important than others. There are some there, if I can do this task, there's a bigger payoff. There's a bigger payoff if I complete this task than there is in this task, for example. Task number 1, task number 2. Where's my payoff? So the Pareto hack, the Pareto principle, again, is really related to, again, if I can look for those tasks that have a big payoff and complete this, and it gets me further ahead of accomplishing my vision. So look for the Pareto, look for those tasks that, again, if I can spend some time here, it gets me further, it gets me closer and closer to the vision that we've created. So some planning hacks, that I've really concentrated on the last couple of years. What's more important than other things? So planning is one thing, but the schedule, crafting a schedule. So we need to be able to craft a schedule. Now this is where my wife and I kind of part company. It's schedules. It'll get accomplished. We just work toward it. I have to have a schedule. Important to have a schedule. Be able to put time frames in. So I am addicted. I am absolutely addicted to Gantt charts. I love Gantt charts. I do. I have a Gantt chart pretty much for everything. So again, Gantt chart hacks here. Use Gantt charts to plan everything. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be. We can use to plan projects. Of course, that's where Gantt chart came from. Henry Gantt. Henry Gantt was actually a compatriot of Taylorism back in the late 1800s. Again, was driving things like the Industrial Revolution. Henry Ford was one of his compatriots as well, and developed the whole assembly line process. But Henry Gantt was really a moving force there as well. And we'll talk about the Gantt chart in just a second. But you can use it to plan projects, as well as even things like vacations. And I'll show you an example in just a moment as well. So Gantt chart, real quick, again, is basically just a marriage of two things. Marriage of a task list to a timeline. That's all Gantt chart is. So I marry the task list. We talk about creating this task list. Now I'm going to match up some sort of timeline. That's why it's important to have, again, already talked about, to those tasks, those time elements. So you see the picture in front of you. Again, the left-hand side is just a task list. The right-hand side, essentially, it's a spreadsheet showing, again, some sort of time. So kickoff, for example, in this project was week of 14 July, etc. So that will be one way to show a Gantt chart. Again, I have used Gantt charts for a lot of different things, even planning vacations. A couple of years ago, we went to New England, my family and I, and we did some touring around, and I planned the entire vacation in a Gantt chart. And if you bear with me for just a second, let me get out of the PowerPoint, and I'll head toward the Gantt chart that I created. There it is. So this is actually a Microsoft project. So you'll notice on the left-hand side, these are my tasks that I created here. So road trip, we're driving where my wife's mom lives. So we were going there to visit her for a couple of days, and also, more importantly, to drop the dog. Oops, don't tell Mandy I said that, okay? Don't tell my wife I said it's more important to drop the dog than see her mom. So, so tasks here. Now we've got associated days with that on this column. So we had the time frame again, start and stop dates there as well. And you'll notice on the right-hand side then there are bars. It's just a bar chart associated with each specific task. So it was a nice little Gantt chart, real quick, real easy. Now my wife does not like Gantt charts. She hates Gantt charts, as a matter of fact. And she really was particular planning out our vacation. Vacation should be fun and spontaneous. Well, I do too. I think that too. They should be fun and spontaneous. But there are certain things we wanted to accomplish in this trip. For example, you'll notice down on the list we were spending the 4th of July in Boston. And we're going to see the fireworks and be in Boston Common and see the fireworks on July 4th. So some things needed to happen in order to get us to Boston Commons on July 4th. You'll notice a couple other things as well. We were hiking the Freedom Trail and doing some historical sites 2 days before 4th of July. My son and I are big history buffs, so we thought that was important to plug in there as well. But history was great. My wife and daughter said, yeah, history is missing from the list. Shopping. Shopping was not on the list. So I said, okay, you know, one of the critical things that they made about the Gantt chart is too rigid. You know, we have to be here then, we have to do this then. It's too rigid. It's not spontaneous. I beg to differ. It can be spontaneous as well, because all I need to do was, okay, well, I want to add in, let's say I want to insert a task here, and we're going to say shopping here. Oops. Bear with my fingers for just a second. All right, we're going to say shopping, and it's going to be 1 day of shopping there. So the problem is there's an overlap between shopping and the 2 days. So if I just link those two things together, okay, now I have another problem. We're going shopping on the 4th of July. That's probably not going to work. So my son and I made a little bit of a compromise, and boom, there it is. So say Gantt charts are rigid and tools that aren't really going to work, but I just completely disagree. It's a good tool to be able to use. It's a visual tool. That's one of the reasons I like it. It's a visual tool. It's also a tool that helps me make decisions, and that's what was important then. It helped us as a family make some decisions. Okay, we want to plug shopping into there. You know, 50% of the family wanted to do shopping. Okay, we can compromise. My son and I were able to compromise. We'll do 1 day in the Freedom Trail. We'll go 1 day in shopping in Faneuil Hall. So we just adjusted the schedule, but without sitting in the car arguing about it. No arguing. No, here it's a decision tool. That's the way I like using Gantt charts. Not just a schedule, but it helps me make decisions about what we're doing as well. So I love Gantt charts. I have Gantt charts all over the house. All kinds of things as well. So that's a hack I'll give you. That's a hack. You start using Gantt charts. It doesn't have to be in Microsoft Project. It can be in lots of different things. Don't have to use Project. A spreadsheet will do. Paper and pencil will do. I planned lots of Gantt charts on the back of a napkin in a coffee shop. Doesn't have to be fancy. It just is about the process and helping you make decisions and choose some sort of timeline as well. Calendaring. I love calendaring. Showing tasks in a calendar, a verb of calendar. calendaring is calendar is again basically a verb of the calendar. So extreme calendaring, I like showing separate calendars for everything that I do. So putting tasks in the calendar is one thing, but I like creating all kinds of calendars, and I have those tasks within the calendars. Let me give you an example. Well, here again, go into, here's my calendar. Here's my Google Calendar for this week. So I don't have a lot on it right now, but you'll see here, this is our webinar that we're doing. I'm going to spend a couple hours after to edit the webinar. Tomorrow I'm doing some business development. I have a couple of meetings to go to. I have a dentist appointment, unfortunately, on Thursday. And then I'm writing. I have two programs to write on Thursday afternoon. Also choosing a Friday to write some blogs. So you'll, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see what those colors mean. So the dark purple, I have three writing. Two dark purples, again, that's writing and editing, and also the light purples writing is social media. Different colors for different things. I'll show you next week real quick here. Again, lots of writing for next week. The following week I'm in DC doing some training. So here's my flights. Here's all the my driving, etc. So I like, again, if you look on the left-hand side, you see all those different calendars. So I even have bills in there. If I don't want to see them, I can turn them off. I don't want to see the bills, so I'll turn it off. I got to, turn off ones or turn on ones that I do want to see. So I like what's called extreme calendaring. I put in there. I put all kinds of dates in there. I put again my flights, my hotels, where I'm staying, family time. Here's my worship time here. I mean, everything is plugged into the calendar. All my tasks again go to the calendar, because I found if I don't plug them in the calendar, they don't get accomplished. There's no time associated with that task. So plugging that into a calendar is going to be extremely helpful. So I use Google Calendar, but Microsoft Outlook does similar type things, so you can use extreme calendaring with that as well. Kanban, I love Kanban, so it's something I've gotten into the last couple of years. It's a Japanese term associated again with project management, but it's really just a visualization tool and a control process. The picture you have here is a very, very simple Kanban, to do, doing, done. And it's typically a board and card or even like Post-it notes. So you move, for example, you have a task that you're doing from the to-do list over here, and you move it over to the doing, and when you have it completed, you move over to the done. So that's a very simple one. There's lots and lots of ways to do Kanban. I'll show you real quick here. I'm going to go back out of here. Trello, T-R-E-L-L-O, is a Kanban program. It's kind of a neat little program. It's based on boards and cards. So each one of these things is a board, and I'll show you. I'll open one in a second. I'll show you the cards inside. So this is basically a Kanban process. It's a little more sophisticated in the way I'm using it, but it doesn't have to be. So for example, I have boards for lots of different things. Here's some of my personal things up here. Even store lists. Here we go. My wife tells me to go to the grocery store. I open up my little app in my phone. I put in the store list, and off I go to the grocery store. So for example, let's down here under MACurfman Learning. So one of the things that I've been working on recently is some content development. So I'm writing actually two courses, one on Microsoft Project and one on QuickBooks. So just open up the Microsoft Project one. I just have a checklist in here. I've done the outline, the content development, the marketing content. I'm now in the midst of doing screenshots of a project to be able to put it in the workbook. Next is beginning to construct that whole workbook together, and also the slides that go with it. And you'll see down here, as scheduled, I'm doing the presentations actually in February, mid-February, in Fort Lauderdale. So it's something that I'm writing and presenting as well. So again, task level, writing it, this content, and I'm breaking it down even further. And again, I don't have it right now, but I could have time. So due date, I plug in here for, let's say, the 31st. Right? I'll save that, and there's my due date. If I go back out of here, there's my due date, January 31st. So lots of cards, and when I'm done with it, all I do is grab it and slide it over to my completed right there, and it's completed. Right? So you'll notice lots and lots of boards in there representing lots and lots of those again, of those 1,500 activities I was telling you about. Those get now placed into Trello and all these different boards. Let's see, it's something else I wanted to... so lots of different boards here. All right. Okay. So back in October, my wife and I were going to go to California. Sonoma, California. I had a client out there I was doing a project for, and we were actually going to go. I was taking my wife with me, and we were going to go visit the vineyards out there. So I started building a little board for the trip to Sonoma to help us decide where we wanted to go. So, here's some vineyards we were looking at going to. Here's some people to see. I have a cousin, Tom, out there in Napa, and I have a cousin, Nick, who's in Redding, California. And we were going to have dinner with David. David's my client, so he wanted to, it was actually during my wife's birthday, so he invited my wife and I over for her birthday. Again, this is helping me make decisions. So dinner with David was one of the things that was going to go to the final list, try to get over to there. We're probably going to see Tom. Tom was about an hour away, so we'll probably do that as well. And we can, again, maybe start. Now, unfortunately, we did not get to go to Sonoma because that was the week that the fires were happening in Sonoma. Santa Rosa was where we were going. Both of the hotels that we were going to stay in burned to the ground, so unfortunately we didn't get a chance to go. So hopefully in the spring or maybe next summer, this summer we'll be able to get to go. But again, even something as simple as that, Trello helps me again decide what people want to see, what's going to be on our final list when we do get a chance to go to Sonoma. So again, that's some pretty fun ways to use it. Again, here's my store list. Here's all the things that drugstore need eye cleaning pads, etc. So just Kanban, or again, this is called Trello. There are all kinds of them out there. I really like this a lot. So that's another way again, it's another one of my hacks I have, is Kanban. Be able to use that to help you decide what things to accomplish, help you prioritize things, and again, the scheduling of those things as well. So again, helps me make decisions and track, again, even which wineries to go to. Again, also now my master task list. Right? So we've looked at, again, building our vision, the goals, our tasks, being able to, again, develop this whole master task list that we're doing, hopefully organizing it through some sort of maybe Gantt chart, and also Kanban system, calendaring, lots of different tools to be able to use as well. Now, here's what we have. We have the vision, the goals, the tasks, but nothing's been done yet. We have to do the work. Now comes the hard part. We have to be able to do the work. So it's what I call Action Jackson. Action Jackson was my favorite action hero when I was growing up in the 70s. He had a cool cartoon. He had coloring books. He had action figures. I mean, oh my goodness, there's just so much stuff. Action Jackson. Action Jackson's my name. Bold things were my game. So that was Action Jackson. So we have to have this what I call a bias for action. We have to be able to not just think about and sit, dwell on this and plan it and schedule. Those are important. but now becomes the real rubber meets the road kind of thing. We have to have this bias for action. Tom Peters, again, one of my favorite business authors, talked about in his very first book, In Search of Excellence. It's the number one key, he says, and lots of other, not that that counts for anything, but I really do believe that the number one attribute for success in anything that you set your mind to do is you have to act upon it. You have to for action. Because a lot of times we sit here, time, is it right, do I have enough money to accomplish this now? Should I do this now? We just kind of sit back and wait, and all of a sudden December 31st comes and we haven't achieved what we're. So moving forward sometimes with maybe not enough not all the information that we want to have, maybe with not all the resources that we want to have. It means constantly and consistently moving forward. Move forward. A bias for action means it's a constant. You don't sit there and wait for things to happen. It's a constant movement. A bias for action. And again, sometimes we're afraid of failing. That's what sometimes we sit back a little bit and we wait for the right time, the right money, etc. And you just have to say, no, I'm moving forward regardless. It might be a little step, but I'm moving forward. In fact, it might be a big step and I might fail. I might. I'm okay with that. Failure is a part of who I am. Failure is a part of who you are. I don't like it. I don't like it any more than anybody else does. But failure is important in our lives. You can think of people like Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, right? Do you know how many times Thomas Edison failed at making the light bulb? Between 2 and 3. He actually didn't write it down, believe it or not. In a biography I read about him, he actually didn't write down how many times, how many iterations he went through, but they estimate between 2,000 and 3,000. 3,000 times he failed at making the light bulb. Now, but he didn't fail, did he? In fact, one of the quotes I love about the book I read about him was he said, no, I didn't fail 3,000 times. I just figured out 3,000 ways not to make the light bulb. And see, that was important for him because, the little filament inside that incandescent bulb, well, he needed that material to burn. And he would, okay, well, that material didn't burn, whatever the material you chose, well, it didn't burn. Or sometimes this material, it burned too quickly. It burned out too quickly. So it took him 3,000 iterations to figure out what was a commercially viable bulb. But it was a constant action, let's search for another material. Let's get this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And failure after failure after failure. Again, it's the learning process that's important. I'm okay with failing because I want to learn what's the best way to do it. So bias for action, but more importantly, failures, learn from those failures, and again, now we're becoming more and more successful through those failures. So bias for action is going to become very, very important because we need that push sometimes to keep moving, to get moving. Also, we need to be able to focus our efforts as well, not just constantly look for everything, those shiny objects. Gary Keller wrote the book, The One Thing. Extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you make your focus. And this is something I've learned the hard way the last several years. I got to narrow the focus of what I'm doing. We're trying to do everything. Gary Keller, I don't know if you know Gary Keller. He's the founder of Keller Williams Realty, the world's largest realty company. And he wrote this book. It's called The One Thing. I'll definitely commend it to you. If you've not read this book, it's an extraordinary book. And he digs down in, and it's incredible, the amount of information. It's not very big. It's a couple hundred pages, 240 pages. So one of the things he talks about, he says, again, it's the one thing. He says, what's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? Let me read that again. What's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And he talks about, again, focusing your efforts on that one thing. Do the one thing that you can do. Everything else becomes superfluous at that point. And it talks about applying that for your different areas of life and in your spiritual life, physical, or health, or your personal life, your relationship life, your jobs, your business, your finances. What's the one thing that I can do in my finances such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So I'll definitely commend that book to you. It's being able to focus our efforts, because of, the scattergun is not a terrific way to become more successful. That's the approach I've had for a while. And the more I focus, the more successful I know I can be, the more successful I have become. Being able to prioritize, I think it's one of the hardest things we have to do today, to be able to prioritize what we're doing. This is not me. This is actually something that actually was developed by Dwight Eisenhower when he was commander of the Allied forces in World War II. He talked about urgency and importance. He said, not everything that is urgent is important. So he developed this whole quadrant system. Stephen Covey took it and kind of popularized it a little bit in terms of time. But Eisenhower said, okay, so important, not important, urgent, not urgent. And in terms of what I do, in terms of my task list, my master to-do list, okay, is it urgent and important? If it's urgent and important, I'm doing that right now. If it's not urgent but important, again, those things are really important to do. Those things, again, are critical to our success. Not the squeaky wheel yet, but you don't want those things to become squeaky wheels, because by the time they're squeaky wheels, they're in trouble. They're back over urgent and important. The key is not to spend too much time in this urgent and important quadrant. We need to spend the bulk of our time, and Covey goes into more detail into that. In the bulk of our time in what he calls quadrant number 2, top right-hand corner. Not down in the bottom left-hand corner, not important, urgent. Again, we're going to manage these things. We're going to delegate. This is, a lot of times, this is an area that's really ripe for delegating, scheduling for later. And quadrant number 4, this is the bottom right-hand corner. Again, those are those trivial things that we talked about earlier. We need to avoid doing those things. So in terms of prioritization, thinking about, again, importance, not important, urgent, not urgent. Thinking about these quadrants. And if you can look at and this is one of the things I do on a weekly basis, I'll come back out to my Trello in just a second. On a weekly basis, I look at my list. Let me just go there now. So you'll see down here I have this weekly to-do list. On a weekly basis, I look at what tasks I need to do in the following week. Typically I do this Sunday evening for the week coming up, and I'll plug in what I need to do. So for example, here's today. I was prepping for the webinar. I'm doing the webinar. I'm going to edit the webinar later. So that's my today. Yesterday I was doing, actually these here are for next Monday. I've already populated next Monday. But this one here, marketing for best year ever, that's what I was doing yesterday, doing some stuff. So I've done that one, so I can take that one over here to the completed items. So what I do is I look once a week at at all of my boards, I pull over tasks that need to be done that week and put them in the day that they need to be accomplished. And again, I have information inside those blocks. Again, we just showed you that a little while ago for that Microsoft project content that I was developing. So that's the way I'd be able. I'm focusing. I'm prioritizing on a weekly basis. I go in and look at those, and now this is, in terms of today, prep for the webinar was important. That was the number one thing. So now I've done that one, so I can pull that one over a year, right? So this helps me, again, Trello really helps me in terms of prioritizing, because I'm looking every week and every day really at that list, and it helps me prioritize the things that I'm doing. Okay? So I'm using the quadrants to help me reprioritize on basically a weekly basis. So being able to prioritize so we've looked again the vision, the goals, the tasks, being able to plan them out, and now being able to actually doing the work itself, prioritizing it and getting the work done. But you'll notice again, so we have to be able to then track and adjust, because not everything is going to go according to the plan, right? I wish it would, but it almost never does. Murphy's Law comes in at some point, right? So we have to be able to track and then adjust. So again, another concept borrowed from project management: execute, monitor, adjust. Execute, monitor, adjust. So each step that I'm doing, each task that I'm doing, each day that I'm doing it, back to the Trello, if I can identify, okay, well, here are the steps that I've done this morning in terms of prepping, I'm executing, I'm monitoring, and I'm adjusting. So there were a couple of things this morning that didn't go according to the plan. So I had to make some adjustments along the way. When I carry a bunch of these little USB flash drives, and I'm going to make a little bit of an analogy here as we're beginning to wrap up our time together. The analogy is this: flash drives are what I'll call contingencies, right? So I want a whole big basket full of these little USB flash drives, so that when I going according to the plan, I can grab one of these little flash drives, plug it in. Remember, plug and play, right? I can plug it in and keep moving in whatever I need to do. The flash drives, again, are the analogy for the solutions, right? But what I want is a whole big basket full of those solutions, a whole big basket full of those USB flash drives, because when I plug one in and it doesn't work, I'm up a creek. But if I have a whole bunch of them, a whole big basket full of these USB flash drives, okay, well, that one didn't work, unplug that one, plug another one in, right? And keep going. Well, if that one didn't work, or if only partially solved the issue, the problem, I can plug another one in. So it's those contingency plans. We're going to plan, we're going to execute, we're going to monitor what's going on. Am I accomplishing everything I set out to accomplish? Is it going according to the plan? Nope, it slipped off the plan. There's a barrier in place. There's something I'm not able to achieve. Okay, what's some solutions, some contingency plans? There's, back in the early 1900s, there was a Norwegian by the name of Arnold Amundsen. He actually was the first to reach the South Pole in 1911. So fascinating, absolutely fascinating story behind that whole expedition. But this is one of the things he said. This is a quote out of his book called "It awaits him who has it in order. Defeat is definitely due for him who has neglected to take the necessary precautions. Bad luck, we call it." So again, what he was saying was, and what he did was, on this trip, he had contingency after contingency. He was a consummate planner. He planned everything out fully, but he had contingency after contingency after contingency. Now, you might remember part of the story was that he and Scott from the UK, from England, were kind of racing toward the South Pole in 1911. And you might remember that Scott's party reached the pole, but some 35 days after Arvidson's party reached the pole. But Scott never to his depot, he froze because basically he had not made enough contingencies in his planning. So what I'm saying is, again, we got to think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, but constantly creating those contingency plans, those USB flash drives, if you will. Think about that analogy. So vision, planning it out, scheduling it out, doing the work itself, having contingency after contingency. But the last point I want to make is you. In order to have your best year ever, you got to think about you. You have to think about what are you sacrificing for some of those successes that you want. And there will be payments due. Success at any level and anything that you choose to accomplish is not going to come free. There will be costs to it. So what are you willing to pay? 9 years ago, I was paying a lot. 9 years ago, I was working 3 jobs, sleeping very little, 2-3 hours a night, 7 days a week, and developed pneumonia, double opaque pneumonia. Ended up in the ER one evening. Doctors diagnosed me with double opaque pneumonia, and I spent 6 days in the ICU, 10 days total in the hospital. My wife told me, like 3 months later, she didn't reveal it right away, but about 3 months later, she told me that the doctors had come to her twice to prepare her, because as far as the doctors were concerned, I was a goner. I was done. Now, fortunately, I wasn't. Fortunately, I was not done. But I learned a lesson. I learned a lot of valuable lessons from that. You know, I was sacrificing a lot. I almost sacrificed me. And I don't ever want to do that again for me or my family. So what's the cost that you're willing to pay? Think about you. I'll leave you with one last quote from a book, again, one of the best books I've ever read, called Essentialism, Greg McKeown. Here's a paradox for you. The faster and busier things get, the more we need to build time into our schedule. And the noisier things get, the more we need quiet, reflection spaces in which we can truly focus. Again, I really think that to become more successful in whatever you choose to become successful at, in all the areas of your life that you're thinking about here today, you need to set some time out for you. You need to think about your schedule, and every moment can't be scheduled, but you need to set some time out for you, some quiet reflection time to reflect on what you're accomplishing, what you're not accomplishing, for you to focus. I wasn't very good at it. I stunk at it, but I'm getting better at it. There's a couple of places. In fact, one of the things I've learned real quick is I've learned to carve out my time, but carve out space. So nicer weather, I like going out on my front porch, which is my thinking space. I don't carry my computer out there. I'll go out there and think and kind of reflect and focus and have some quiet time. So carve out space, carve out time for you to focus. The more we need it. And that's what Greg McKeown. The more we do things, the more successful we are, the more we're going to need those things. So it really has been my pleasure to spend this time with you. Best year ever. I am guaranteeing, yeah, that's in writing. I'm guaranteeing if you actually do all these things, it will be your best year ever. And and I'm doing the same thing. I'm following my own medicine here. I'm taking my own medicine. I'm following these things, and I want this in 2018 to be my best year ever. And I'm going to make sure that I do that, because I'm following. I'm taking the medicine. I'm good, and I want to achieve my best year yet. And I'm hoping that for you. I'm hoping and praying that for you, that you will have your best year ever as well. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you at some point in time. Thanks for spending some time with me here this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much. Bye now.